What's shaking, cats and kittens? Rob Lee here, and today's episode of The Truth in This Art is sponsored by a new online art platform called Fire and Bliss Creative. Fire and Bliss is the first art platform that I've seen that focuses on the art of the LGBTQ plus BIPOC and allied artists exclusively. And I have to say, the pieces are amazing. Whether you're looking specifically to add diverse art to your collection, or you have a space that needs a bit of updating, every single print on fireandbliss.com has been created by a diverse, independent artist who maintains full control over their art and their profit. I worked with Fire and Bliss to curate a collection of my favorite pieces, like Somewhere Blue by Wodrich Francois. Shop my favorites at fireandbliss.com/truth and get 20% off your first purchase at Fire and Bliss. Again, that's fireandbliss.com/truth and use the code TRUTH for 20% off your first purchase. Welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today I am interviewing local creative, the owner of This Sporting Life. Please welcome Arvay Adams. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So we've been traveling in different circles. I can shamelessly say that I have many of your pieces in the crib. I am wearing one that was custom done recently. Shout out to you. I've been wearing this like every night. So it's like ridiculous. It's like,
I love hearing that.
I mean, it's real. I mean, it's shameless, but it's real. So give us those vital stats, like, you know, your background, Baltimore, what have you, in any experiences that really kind of inform your creative pursuits?
Well, Baltimore native, Micah graduate. Right after Micah, moved to New York, worked for Fat Farm, worked in fashion, moved from New York, lived in LA, kind of did my own thing, started really getting kind of like more into the art scene over on the West Coast. Moved back to New York, pretty much living that artist lifestyle, and then moved back to Baltimore to refresh my batteries and stayed.
So you had the experience at Fat Farm, you had the kind of coastal experience and getting to LA and getting to New York. It's not like, I've got part of Washington, I got a little bit of, Arizona. It's like, no, you hit the extremes that are kind of known for that fashion component and that kind of fame component. So from those experiences in living and working there, what kind of gave you that juice to come back here and ultimately like stay really? Did you bring any of some of those lessons that you've learned on those two different coasts and those in those roles to come back here?
Oh, most definitely. The Baltimore that I left was a different Baltimore than I came back to.
Sure.
I mean, I was gone for close to 17 years. So, it was, coming back. I mean, my plan was never to come back to Baltimore. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of like, been there, done that. And it's like Baltimore's slow. Nothing happens in Baltimore. But like I said, I came back because I wanted to refresh my batteries, see family, hang out with some friends. And I've noticed that Baltimore was actually changing. And also, too, in my head, I'm older now, too. So like, the flash and the romanticism of like, bragging to people that you live in these big cities just wore off. Yeah. It's like, so what? There's millions of people who live there, And it's just like that whole thing of like being in these bigger cities, no matter what you do, there's somebody doing it better than you or the same level or somebody pulling at your, pulling on your collar.
Yeah.
So, it was a thing of coming back to Baltimore, being like, I can actually sit back and analyze some things and spend some time on some things without that hardcore like hustle kind of put on you. Because Baltimore, like if you dig yourself in a hole, I mean, you can dig yourself out of it pretty quickly by, I don't know, driving an Uber or something. Whatever it is that you need to do to make some money, you can kind of maintain in Baltimore. With some of these bigger cities, not so much.
Yeah, totally.
And also, too, it's a thing where, like I said, I've seen things were growing and things were progressing. And DC's down the street. New York, Philly is up the street. Yeah. So I was just kind of like, this will make a good home base because, I mean, I am a Baltimorean. I mean, like I said, I live these other places, but, as soon as somebody wants to see something about Baltimore, I'm like, I'm from Baltimore. This was going on. Like, I kind of wore it on my, wore it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of good to be back. The one thing I would say is being back, what I've noticed about Baltimore is that it's just like, it grows and then it just stays a little stagnant. Mm-hmm. So I guess my whole thing is like, while I'm here, I guess to show people or be part of, I wouldn't say show people, I would say be part of people that aren't cool with being stagnant, people that kind of keep grinding, kind of people that keep doing things. Like, even if you leave, the fact that you can leave and go somewhere else and say you're from here, you got your start here. Yeah. For a lot of times, people wouldn't even say that much, you know?
I think one of the things that you're touching on is one of the things that I look at in doing this particular podcast. Like, I look back in some of the early episodes, and it's not really that long ago. I'm like, oh, I'd ask a lot of different questions. Now I kind of want to have that one back. And it's that desire not to be stagnant and being measured and thoughtful and mindful of like how quickly you're trying to grow and how far you're trying to go from where you maybe have started, and doing it in a way that makes sense. Because sometimes people are like, oh, it's a whole different thing now. This is a TV show. It's like, no, it's still a podcast. It's still, this is rooted. But how can we change it up and turn it up a notch? Not necessarily several notches.
Right.
I'm sure you noticed that Emeril Lagasse reference right there. I don't know if you're a Food Network guy, but I threw one in there.
I know. But I mean, I get exactly what you're saying. Like, I've learned, and I tend to share with people a lot. It's like, when people want to do something, let's just use clothing, for example.
Sure.
They want to come right out and be polo. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, well, what about just releasing some T-shirts? How about just doing anything? Like, and also people also use that as an excuse not to do anything. I mean, stuff like being creative is expensive. Being creative is time consuming. So, like, you usually either have mad time or mad money. You never really have both. And if you have both, you're just probably going to be polo. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it's like, I tell people all the time, it's like, just do something. Like, you don't have to be, this textbook finished product as soon as you come out. And I just see, I see a lot of people in their creative endeavors feel like, oh, it's got to be perfect. Please show me what perfect is. Please, someone show me what perfect is.
I do that. Like, I've dabbled in a few things outside of podcasting, and like, I have a comic that is out there that people may or may not know of. And when I originally got it done, it's like, maybe I'm changing the artwork. Maybe I want to redo it, but at least you have, I think they used to call them like ash can models. And it was essentially like, so you can keep the copyright, but you would do what you wanted it to be, and then you can refine it later. That's my version of that. It's like, this is not the perfect thing. This is not the turnkey thing. 'Cause that's what we want all the time. This turnkey, right. Put it this way, turnkey and scalable. How can I turn this and monetize? It's like, no, you're doing it to create, or unless you're doing it to make money, but know why you're doing it. And I think that's where it gets lost. So in that, I don't want to belabor, because I want to get into the sporting life. So what was the inspiration about that, and what can people expect from that work? Because it's in different places. So give us some of that too.
Well, the sporting life pretty much just came about because, I love sports and I love history. And being from Baltimore, there was a lot of sports and history to pull from. And, it was like, I also love design, and it was probably the easiest vehicle for me for what I was into and wanted to do to actually, like you said, monetize. It's like, oh yeah, someone buying a hat, someone buying a T-shirt. It's not like trying to buy a painting on the wall, or, say trying to get somebody to get me to design their whole website or something, using my aesthetic. It was just like the easiest and also cheapest way to get work in people's hands. So, it started off that way, but now, it's grown. It's like, I have so many interests. I have so many things that are also, I have so many other skill sets that fit along with those interests that I can still introduce you to that. Like, I don't know if you've been seeing some of the digital paintings I've been posting on Instagram. Yeah. And those are actually for this sporting life project I'm working on that deals with AR, so augmented reality, and also too, it's going to be dealing with the old school kind of like busting open a pack of cards. I got a couple of card vending machines that will actually, be blind. So you put in a buck, you get a card. It might be a piece of junk, it might be a great card, it might be an art card, it might be a one of one. So it's like all these things. That whole thing of like actually being a shopper. And being, I would say, almost going back to your excitement about actually consuming something. Yeah. Even on a smaller scale. So I feel like now we're just all consumers anyway. So I don't know how often I actually really get excited about buying anything that isn't customly made for me, or something that I haven't, or I found that I know no one else has. Now, anything outside of that, I'm not excited to shop. No,
I legitimately I agree with that. I try to. Now, a lot of my shopping decisions have come out of conversations that I've had like this. Either it's something that's custom or something that, like, I know chefs, I'm into cooking, right? And I know chefs and they'll say like, no, you got to get this. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm now super excited for a chef knife because somebody I had a personal conversation with that was maybe after this podcast is like, you should be getting that, right? It's something that's referred to me. That's the way I look at things. And I think the card idea, that's fire. I was thinking about something very similar to that recently, with, and even calendars. With some of the people that I've been talking to, and they're just like, yo, celebrate these things. Do something. Like, I think the key thing that you touched on, the excitement, right? So
yes,
things feel disposable because they're digital. And sometimes you have something in your hand, and that's really, I think, what you're tapping into is that nostalgia, tapping into that and tapping into that tangible thing. Like, on Christmas, I brought one of the koozies in, and my girl's kid was like, yo, this is Lamar joint? I was like, look at the back of it. He's like, oh, word? My man hand stitched this? I was like, we do things. That was the way I said it. So that's definitely there, and it's just tapped in. And this is where it gets really funny. My girl was like wrapping up gifts. She pulled out a hat, and she thought it was for her son. It was one of your joints, and it turned out to be for me. And she's like, I fucked that up. That was for you, because I know you fucks with his stuff. And I was like, exactly. But it had that excitement there, and it had that, I want to make sure I get this right, because your stuff had that vibe of, this is for a specific person and this rocks. And it's like, yo, this says you. That was what she said. She was like, no, this is definitely a hat for you. And I think it was I'm
glad to hear that.
I think it was the all black, like Baltimore joint with the black, the gold. No, sorry. The orange B on it. Orange circle with the black V in the center. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Baltimore Black Sox.
Absolutely, because I used to get the Negro League hats back in the day.
Oh yeah.
So, describe chain stitching. That's one of the things that I know that you're like popular for, big on. So, how does it differ from like stitching that we come across generally?
Well, chain stitch is a decorative stitch. I mean, it's been used to hold things together like regular stitching because it can be done fast. But the thing about it is that once that link is broken, like the garment doesn't become, it's not nearly as sturdy. So it's not a lock stitch, but it's become a decorative stitch. So like it was really big. I mean, I learned and got into it, even though prior I seen it and didn't care anything about it, like on bowling shirts, like motorcycle things and car culture things, like back then when I was a kid, it was like, that's cool, but I didn't know anything about it. But the thing that brought me back into it is I got deeper and deeper into studying like sports uniforms, sports logos and everything. I've revisited. I'm just kind of like, man, like that's a great look. And I start noticing the difference between computer generated chain stitch and hand chain stitch. Yeah. Ebbets Fields is like great for like, it was an introduction to that. And like, I don't know if you ever heard of them, but like, they're kind of like, when it comes to replicating old sports stuff, they're kind of like the top of the top.
I dig it.
But going back, so like I noticed like the difference between what I thought was just hand chain stitch from computer based off Ebbets. And I was just like, man, I always wanted to learn how to do it. But, the thing of buying a machine, number one, finding a machine, man, when I first got introduced to it, like good luck with that. Buying one and then the learning curve. So it was a thing of like, always in the back of my head, like one day. And then you ever heard of the company Solab?
Yes. Local.
So I was one of the owners, Jeremiah. He was being gifted some sewing machines. So I actually went with him to help him, like, load up the sewing machines. And I noticed in the corner this chain stitch machine. I'm like, what's up with that one? I was like, you guys giving that one away? They was like, oh, we haven't touched that thing in 50 years. Sure, you can take it. So once again, I'm like, wow, this is great. And the machine lived his whole life in Baltimore. So it's like, it's done anything from like workwear in Baltimore, to police uniforms, fire uniforms, EMS, like anything in that time frame from the last time they used it, it's touched in Baltimore. So that's another little great thing about it.
So what you're saying is it had that light on it where you came and it's like, yo, what's up with that one in the corner?
I mean, for me to even notice what it was,
right?
Like 5 years prior, I would have been like, So like it's an old sewing machine.
So you touched on, and I don't want to forget this, you touched on like sports logos and stuff like that. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. Real quick, what are like 3 sports logos that pop for you? It could be any generation, it could be any sport. What are those logos that pop for you?
Too many. So many. Because what it is really, it's like how it vibes with the name. The more obscure, the like more I'm into it. Like I recently seen this one. There was a bathhouse in Utah that had a baseball team, and they were the bathers. Like, and it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like some like doughboy, like smiling, like drying himself off on the cat.
That's great.
So it's like stuff like that. I mean, of course, you know, I'm Baltimore. So like, you know, anything old school Colts, anything old school, anything Baltimore, I'm a fan of.
I'm going to throw this one at you.
Yeah, Skipjacks. I mean, I love that logo.
What about the Baltimore Claws?
Baltimore Clippers, the first Baltimore Bullets stuff. I mean,
you remember the Baltimore Claws, though?
Was that again?
Do you remember the Baltimore Claws?
Oh, yeah. So I did a whole project based on them. When I was studying it, it was like, you know, because during that time, you know, in the 90s, everybody was taking that kind of stuff and flipping it and trying to like modernize it. So, you know, I was just like, man, I didn't want to just do the regular Baltimore Claws. It's like I wasn't sure if that was the original logo at first. Right. Some of the colors were like, you know, it was original logo, but the colors were off. What everybody was, what I got introduced to. Yeah. So I found the colors, but then finding the true colors, I actually thought that used to be called the Baltimore Hustlers.
Nice.
And when he played 3 games known as the Baltimore Hustlers, but they changed the name. And that's when they became the Baltimore Claws because they didn't want the negative connotation of being the Hustlers. So I did a whole project on the Baltimore Hustlers. What's that again?
So we've had that happen twice because like the Bullets were here, what have you, initially. And,
exactly.
And one thing that pops for me locally speaking in terms of like iconography and logos, the like classic Baltimore Blast joint, fire. Oh, yeah. Fire.
Oh, yeah. I've done a couple of caps with that. That I got to be careful with. Like, you know, like they left the logo, became something else, brought it back, you know, so I still flip it. I mean, it's slightly different. I use the one that we grew up on. Yeah. But, you know, I don't use it too often because, you know, it's like, yeah, those are one-offs.
It's like, oh, I got more mail, I see. Oh, is that a cease and desist letter?
Which is another thing, too. It's like, you know, like dealing with this because I work in a gray area. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know, the only thing that really makes it interesting, I can do a spin if you're like a super fan, you know, like if you know all the little ins and outs of the backstories of things. Yeah. And that's super cool because I get to do that sometime. But the main thing would get somebody is if they remember what they remember from it as a kid. Yeah. You know, when you just become that, like, you know, that 8-year-old kid again. So, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a professional at trademark law, but I mean, dude, you got to know what you're getting yourself into.
Totally.
So I do a lot of research even on that.
I remember back in the day, like this is the Albert Bell years. So you're probably going to know what I'm talking about here when they did the Futuristic jerseys.
Yes.
They worked, but then they didn't. Like it was weird.
They were ugly. They were ugly. But I mean, they don't now.
Yeah, right. Right. Because it's like, needs a little bit of a refresh here. And I'm looking at my custom Orioles like jersey mounted on my wall that I can't fit because it's too big now. Because I was, you know, everyone was just in a Saint Lunatics video in like the mid 2000s. It's like, this is just too big.
I've sold a lot of jerseys. I was like, I'm not a 2-day. That's nothing. I'm like, why do I have this dress?
It's like, I got to tuck this in, my guy.
Right.
So did you have any early entrepreneurial experiences, like maybe when you were a kid, when you were younger?
Oh, yeah. I used to sell candy in high school.
Same.
So, yeah, like I had a grandfather that had a liquor store, like a city liquor store. Yeah. So I would just go over there and grab candy, you know, bring it to school, sell it, had candy on every floor, had a lock, you know, I just pay somebody in candy for their locker. So I would say like, you know, always like a little bit of a side hustle. I wouldn't say that, I wish I was a better business person. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm kind of more of a business person out of necessity because let's get, if you're creative, unless you have deep pockets or somebody supporting you, it's kind of like, you know, you kind of got to monetize the creativity, I guess you could say. You got to monetize the work so you can keep going because it's not cheap. So I would say, it was always that. I would say the candy thing. I had a skateboard company. Back when everybody was like, black people don't skateboard. And this was around when Supreme was first big enough. Yeah. So I was like, you know, I was running in those crowds for a little bit. I wouldn't say like hardcore, but I was around doing that whole Soho streetwear development scene. Yeah. Skateboard and pushing around that. And then I went from there in LA and actually I had a good friend of mine, Logan Hicks. Him and I, we started a cell phone not media company, I would say content, where you would download wallpapers and all that. Yeah. Like pretty much early on, I would say early 2000s, if you were downloading wallpapers, paying for them, you were paying us. So, you know, as soon as the smartphones came out, though, that was done. So, I always had this whole thing with tech, and also too, like, just figured out ways to monetize my creativity as well.
The way that you described that made me think of that hip hop documentary when I think it was DMC. He's like, I heard Rakim, and I was like, we're done. I was like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So I got one more real question before I get to some rapid fire ones for you.
Okay.
From your standpoint, you touched on the chain stitch like machine that's been around forever. And just kind of other things, talked about tech a moment ago, what have you, wallpapers and all that good stuff. What would you say is the greatest modern invention that you kind of use regularly? I mean, don't be gauche and say a cell phone. That's fucking stupid. But what is the greatest modern invention that has had an impact on you as a creative and as an entrepreneur?
I mean, I'm not supposed to say a cell phone, but I mean, honest to God, truth, it probably is. Because I don't think I use the cell phone. I mean, nowadays I use the cell phone. I shouldn't even say phone.
Sure.
I mean, it's my little personal computer. I mean, I always have ones that have high processing power. I write creative apps, actually draw on my phone. I manipulate images on my phone. Like it's really an extension of my computer. So I would say it happens to be, I happen to be able to talk on it, but for the way I work, I mean, it helps me a lot. And also too, it's like, being always looking for resources and I don't have to go to the library. I actually, I think of something, find something, I hear a name, I found out Richard Pryor was from Bedoya, Indiana. Yeah. And I found a hockey team from there and did a hat based on Richard Pryor's hometown's hockey team. Yeah. It's like, stuff like that. Cause just you hear something and it's right there in my hand. I can just do the research. I can do the design. And within, an hour or two, I can actually have a product. And it's all because, it's like access to no matter where I'm at when that idea hits me, that I have this thing in my hand.
That's legit. I think, yeah, I was gauching saying not a phone, but I think in that the way that you articulate it is very similar to, I think, what James Nasty said on the first episode of this podcast. He was like, no, I do everything through this. He's like, I schedule, I do my meetings. This is my assistant. It's everything. Mm-hmm. And I think it has its pitfalls with it, because it's like with that access to everything, you have access to everything.
Like I never stop, it's like, if I had to go to the library, I might take some days off.
That's a lot of books here.
Right.
So in this last few minutes, I got some rapid fire questions for you. And the way that this works is I'm going to ask you a question and you just hit me with the answer. You don't have to provide any extra context unless you think it's really necessary.
Gotcha.
All right. First one. And I think because we're both wearing them right now, I think this is going to be an interesting answer. What is your favorite accessory to wear?
Hats.
Of the ones that you've traveled to, what is your favorite sports venue?
Oriole Park, Camden Yards.
Gang. This is a great question right here. This is a little trolly because we're on the same page. How many losses will the Orioles have this year?
Oh,
that was a shot, wasn't it?
90 plus. I'm already expecting it.
It's like they done.
Yeah,
so you spring training yet?
And that's going to be my answer for about at least another 3 years. 90 plus.
I saw the thing earlier said they're moving the left field wall back to stop outlier home runs. I was like, yeah, they're just going to be the longer ones. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Last two. And well, actually last one, because you already answered this one and with the modern invention one. What's that rarest piece of sports memorabilia that you have in your possession? Is it a card? Is it a jersey? Like game play ball?
That's actually a hard one. Because I have a lot of sports cards, so I would say probably the rarest probably will be one of the sports cards.
Sure.
But I think my favorite that I actually bought for myself, as a gift to myself, was that first Ravens ticket. First game I ever played.
Nice.
Whole ticket. It's not graded because I didn't know anything about that thing. But I would say that's the one where I kind of always know where that thing's at. I always have tabs on it.
Absolutely.
I can grab it at any minute.
That's great. That's great. I mean, one of the ones I have is ridiculous, and I met the dude and I got him to sign it. I got a signature from one of my favorite wrestlers, got his autograph on this 8x10, and he wanted to take a picture with me, and I was too fanned out. I was like, nah, I can't do that.
Right?
I was like, I don't think I could do that, Nakamura-san. And he's just like, no, take a picture. He just finished the match. I was like, no. So That's all I
Who's
had.
the wrestler?
It's Shinsuke Nakamura.
No, who's the wrestler?
Shinsuke Nakamura.
You did say that, right?
And I saw him at his last indie show, and I didn't watch the match. I waited in line so I could be the first person.
Hey, man, that's what fandom is.
Real.
It's cool to have heroes.
Absolutely. So I want to leave right there. And I want to invite you to plug anything you got, website, social media, all of that good stuff, so people can check out your work and buy some damn stuff.
Oh, word, yeah. Well, IG, Arvay Adams, and This Sporting Life. And the website is thissportinglife.org.
So there you have it, folks. And this brief accelerator, but I think we got some things covered. So this is...
we finally got it done.
Absolutely. I've seen each other in real life. I was like, hey, man, I think you hate me. What up? So for Arvay Adams of This Sporting Life, I am Rob Lee saying that there is art in and around Baltimore, and you just got to look for it.